Although we are in a podcast. How do we have so many people in here? You guys see? How do you guys get in the live stream before I'm here? Okay, so on notification, we got the channel is set. So what was happening with that is that the phone app didn't have the option, right? It didn't have the option to change it from set for kids to not. We're going off of the we're getting off of the Wi-Fi. So now we're on GSM. How is that? Is that signal better? Okay. I don't know what's going on there. I have a hotspot in here. I guess they're sabotaging my hotspot, right? They're cooking my hotspot, making it hotter with 5G microwave satellites through the hood of the vehicle. Yeah. How's everybody doing? Zopov wants to talk about something really specific that we're not going to actually talk about. We're actually going to be talking about other things. I'm doing great, David. Thank you. Look at that. I'm glad, man. Settings for the channel to, I'll move position. We're moving position. Stand by. We are en route to broadcast. So we're basically like a pirate radio, like an unauthorized. We're basically like an unauthorized pirate radio station, and they're trying to shut us down. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? Okay. All right. We are at the highest elevation that I can get here. We probably just went up like 30 feet, and yeah, no shit, right? Okay, I'm gonna try to let's do something real quick. I'm gonna try to throw on the hotspot and see if the hotspot works better. How's that now? I'm almost on the hotspot. Let's see. Okay, I'm on the hotspot. Is that better? I do not smoke. No. All right. Sweet. Okay, we're cooking. We're cooking here. Okay. Let me set up this phone. You guys like that? You're riding on my steering wheel right now. How does that feel? What if we do the entire stream like this, and it would just be like recent events, in China, you have, the ambassador to Israel. Everybody just starts vomiting. The vomit cast. Okay. All right. Vertigo pilled. All right. Hey, glad you're here, Joe. Thanks for coming. Oh man, you guys hit me so hard with the Freedom song. So let me explain this again. I've already said this. The Freedom song is on LMS, which I don't really use. I haven't used LMS for like, several years, and so it's a different music processing software. So I would have to like pull it out and fire up LMS. I don't even know if I have it installed anymore. I'm sure I still have the original bones for the project, but I got some other things. I got some other songs coming out. Okay. All right. So we're starting off with the recent events here. Edward's gonna help with it. You're gonna help. Okay. All right. Oh, we'll look at it. We'll do the other shit that I'm working on, and then I'll get around to it at some point. It's not my priority right now. Even though there's like little like people have made like little sample songs and stuff. All right, so I'm sure everybody has heard probably like two things. Now, one would be like Dershowitz, and one would be uh, the situation with the Chinese ambassador, right? So if you're not familiar with this, we'll do Dershowitz first, or should we do no? Let's do China first. Let's start with China, right? Because most of this shit, like China's the main priority of everything that's going on right now is all about China. And so, if I had to, well, the current event would be this guy, this cat named Du Wei. Like his first name's Du, last name Wei. That's an ambassador. That's a Chinese ambassador to Israel. So he was found dead in his. He had like a diplomatic apartment, and it would have been in the one that's named after Herzl, the Herzliya, Israel, which is named after Theodor Herzl. That's the guy who's publicly attributed with Zionism, the creation of Zionism, right? And this followed a Pompeo visit. Pompeo visited earlier than this, which is important to note. And the guy got assigned to Israel in February, the ambassador. The reason that Pompeo was visiting Israel is because right now, China and the United States are basically like in a tug of war with the state of Israel to gain favor. So like, because as the tension grows between China, PRC and USA, because of the financial position of international Jewry and the closest connection between them all being the state of Israel, you have like hardcore nation state leaders trying to embed themselves as closely as possible with anybody in Israel. And so like that's what's going on right now. I'm sure that the state of Israel is like loving it, you know what I mean? But there has been a huge push to pressure Israel into like echoing the United States' apprehension against China, or trying to get them to like emulate it in some way. And this has been going on for a while, but it's gotten hotter in the last couple of weeks. And that will be the purpose. That's most likely the purpose of like the main purpose of Pompeo's visit, at least on a service level. Like who knows what the fuck they actually talked about. He's probably hanging out with like Epstein or something. But on the sub level, he's or on the surface level, the public level, like how people that are into this kind of stuff talk. They're like, well, there's been tons of talk about pressuring Israel into trying to get some kind of distance with China, so that China doesn't get like totally embedded in Israel. And this is really like that's kind of like the broad stroke, right? And it's really stupid. It's like a very stupid misunderstanding. I mean, I do believe that's exactly what's going on, but it's extremely stupid for a couple of reasons. Like if you look at it from the perspective of like American diplomats trying to get China to or trying to get Israel to go hard on China, it doesn't make any sense, because China is with like the Belt and Road Initiative that's all through the Middle East. It's basically like a consolidated it's essentially going to be like a consolidated export highway that's like transnational, and that will pass approximately through Israel at some point, right? Like in order to get from like east to west, right? It's like a new super highway of goods transfer, but it's not necessarily like physical, right? Like it involves everything from coordination and construction projects and communication infrastructure, like actual physical logistics like roads, but it's just like a giant trade package. And China, if you didn't know this, China is also involved with like the current, like the successor to what used to be called Blackwater, which I believe is called Z right now, like XI, right? Is that correct? And they're like they picked up like really early security contracts for doing security while they have um, uh, all the Chinese going all over the place. Like Blackwater, like the private military contractor, the huge one. Like the Blackwater, the guys who got like, they basically they were accused of shooting like huge numbers of civilians in Baghdad, and they tried to close their contract and criminally prosecute him, and they can't be prosecuted, right? Like it's not going to work, right? So I'm looking at a comment here. Oh, is it? Are they Academy? Are that? What is Z still around, or did Z go out? Is there no longer Z? I've trained at Academy in Illinois. Is it Illinois? Or maybe it was an East Coast one. Eric Prince is based in Hong Kong now. That's what one viewer says. Yeah, and Duai he was working for you in Ukraine, right? Like as a representative to Ukraine, right? And there's been a lot of assassinations that have taken place in Ukraine recently, right? Like in the last several years. I mean, Ukraine's obviously been like, it's like a micro conflict for, since that little coup that took place, right? Okay. So this the Douay guy, he was 52 years old, so he's like a healthy guy. Dies of natural causes. It seems unlikely that it's unnatural, obviously, right? Like this is like they're playing some spook tag over there, and he got, he wasn't running away fast enough, so he got tagged, and now he is visiting heaven. Okay, so now China has a bunch of interesting stuff going, like interesting projects going on in and around Israel. Like they have they have a bunch of contracts at the Haifa port, which is like that's like a import and export port. And I guess there's some kind of like I was reading in Jerusalem Post, they're talking about some kind of salination plant that was large that they had down there, that the Chinese are running. So the Chinese are like horizontally diversifying into external states, states that aren't China, a lot like the United States did, post World War II, and that has caused, like, this is like a part of the reason why political science hacks talk about the Chinese American conflict as a Thucydic conflict, right? Like a Thucydides trap, like an inevitable face-off that occurs when two superpowers get big enough to compete with one another, and they have to fight, right? Who got suicided? Do you know who got suicided? The Douai in Herzliya. So yeah, all this stuff, like everything that's gone on since, like post, I mean, really Iraq, right? Like Iraq even Afghanistan. The like, it's all kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? Like Iraq specifically, because of Iraq is like related to all of the color revolutions for the Arabs, and so like when it went on rotation, like destabilization through, Libya, Tunisia, Syria, Iran, like they have like micro destabilization in Iran, and some displacement of some of their internal government, right? A lot of like spying and shit, all this stuff, Hillary Clinton, he died. all that shit, right? And then you got like the Syrian war, which is like the probably the most dramatic result of all this still going on. The Syria conflict is really interesting because of relationship between the relationship between Israel and ISIS, which is like, it's pretty well established at this point. Like the the force that's there to stabilize it, whatever force is destabilizing Syria and become moves in close to Israel border, um, they'll get treatment. Like they can come into Israel to receive treatment. Like if they have a firefight on the border, and then there was an incident where ISIS made a video to like make a formal apology to Israel for they had like some kind of border, like a mistaken accidental border incursion, like outside the Golan Heights, like they just had like ISIS militia like mistakenly attacking, it was either land or units that were Israeli, and so then they had to apologize, which is like an ominous. It's a very, and the news didn't talk about it all, like you'd see it on like alt media and shit would talk about it, but you wouldn't see it on like MSM. They wouldn't acknowledge it, and it's kind of like it reminds me of the time, like if you're below the age of 30, you probably won't remember this, but like Saturday Night Live used to be kind of funny, and like Norm Macdonald is probably one of my favorite Saturday Night Live characters, and he used to have like actor, and his like when he did the whatever they call it, Weekend Update or whatever the news show is for SNL, they had this like he did this bit that was so fucking great. It was like when Marlon Brando, who's like a very established like he's considered like a classical film actor for the beginning, through the 20th century, and he was like he's like well established, right? Like he's got fucking like movie tenure, equivalent, right? And then he said that he said in an interview that Jews ran Hollywood, and then it was like he got blacklisted, but it wasn't like the way that it is now with like people being neurotic about it. It was just like it just happened. Like they're just like, oh, you can't say that. That's not nice. You're not gonna work here anymore. And then he got blacklisted, and then he had to make a public apology. And then after he made the public apology, then he started being able to do stuff again. And it was really like that was what the entire Norm Macdonald bit was about. Was like, it's very dry and like funny. You should look it up. It's really funny. But that's kind of what the ISIS situation where they're apologizing to Israel. It really reminded you of that, and it made me think, like telling that then brings me to like thinking about, I don't know if you guys have, like I'm aware of what, my thoughts are on Al Qaeda, like the creation of Al Qaeda, UBL, ISIS, AQIZ in Iraq. That's like Al Qaeda in Iraq. That's what they call them for like military dudes over there. And like my own experience in Iraq, it was a very like it was hard to see while you were there, but if you just use your brain for a minute, it was really easy to understand that pretty much what happened was you had the period that was known as the Al-Anbar Awakening, which is basically like a time when the U.S. The military, both Marines and U.S. Army, did a model where they used the Iraqi nationals, like Iraqi militias, paid the tribal sheiks a bunch of fucking U.S. dollars, just like cold hard cash, and then basically said like, hey, stop attacking the United States and work with us. And so they just kind of like bribed them, and then in conjunction with the Iraqi militias, who used to be the people fighting us, like the enemy size like dropped down considerably, and then we put up We basically did like Berlin Wall in each city, and then by compartmentalizing it and sectioning it into like a grid, like a physical grid, where it's like you had essentially like serpentines everywhere. You could limit movement and then focus on each sector, and then so it got really easy to shoot those guys. But you gotta remember that this is so the Iraqi militias were basically like it's because we saw it in real time with the explanation of what was going on, like the surface level explanation through the media. We forget that this is exactly what happened in Iraq is exactly what it looked like when the Bolsheviks took over Russia and then fought the Russians, like their own people. You know what I mean? That it's exactly what it looked like when it happened in Yugoslavia. It's exactly what it looked like in every single revolution, where it's like it doesn't really matter what the narrative is, like what people accept as the historical account. You have to look at what actually ended up happening, which is typically like big piles of bodies getting dumped into holes, and the reason, like the surface level reasoning, is just it's just like a story. Like the name tags, the uniforms, that's just like a story, right? Like that people buy into. Both the people that are getting killed and the people that are doing the killing buy into the story. And it's when you read between the lines, it's just the same thing. And so anyway, the situation in Iraq destabilizing, and then you get on rotation like all through basically a bunch of states that circle Israel. If you didn't know that, like the entire period from the Iraq War up until now has basically like made a big softened circle around Israel, and that's important to understand, right? And most of the, like in the Syrian war, most of the all the arms that were getting sold and shit were kind of like getting rotated through, and people are familiar with like Benghazi and shit like that. But the modern Syrian civil war was, they dumped like a ton of Bulgarian manufactured small arms like RPGs, grenades, AKs, rifles and all that shit, mortars, artillery, like all that shit got brought in via Bulgaria through civilian aircraft. So they use like civilian aircraft to bring it in. And there's like an investigative journalist, like an Eastern European investigative journalist that like went into Syria and was taking pictures of the lot numbers and shit of munitions and shit that were found on dead people, and after an engagement, and she was like embedded with I think she's embedded with the Syrian government, so they were like killing the people. They were killing smaller units that were fighting with them, and then she was permitted to like take pictures of shit, so she did it a little different because she's actually presumably an independent journalist. At least the methodology is what an independent journalist would do, like somebody that was actually trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. So she took pictures of all the like lot numbers and shit, like off the cases and all that shit, and determined like through flight records, that they came in through civilian aircraft that weren't marked. There was no record of there was no public record of these flights being used for arms transfers, because it would in fact be illegal. Like it's against international law, and this goes all the way back to like the sinking of the Lusitania, which killed American citizens, and then the reason that Germany sunk that was because they were bringing arms. So there's like arms and munitions on a civilian boat, and it had like Americans on it, and then because it was carrying arms for the war effort, then it was like considered a military target, and they sunk it, and then that's like part of the reason that was used as like part of the justification to bring the United States into World War I. So like there's this is not anything new, and that's why um, international warfare law, which is bullshit anyway, right? Like it's a total crock of shit. It's just another filter to like fucking confuse people, you know. It has no enforcement. It's just a weapon. Like it has no enforcement or expectation of enforcement unless you're the guy that didn't make it. If you're the guy that wrote it, the law, then like you can just like not follow it. But if you're like another nation and you haven't figured out that's all bullshit, then it's like you toe the line, right? And the Bulgarians are they sold like huge numbers of arms for these contracts, and it ended up being like they figured out it was the CIA. So the CIA was doing like making big ass contracts with Bulgaria to bring in fucking small arms into Syria, for destabilizing Syria. And then obviously like that, along with like ISIS, affiliation, or I don't want to say affiliation. ISIS is, friendly, friendly, whatever you call it, like buddy hugs with Israel when they get wounded by Israel's border. It kind of paints a picture, right? Other shit that was like super fishy was that in Syria there was they had like Hughes Electric Company, which is like Hughes Electric is like a like an American contractor that's been making shit for like a long time. It's an old company, right? And the they made like the TOW missiles, right? So the TOW is like a wire guided anti-tank missile, and it's pretty dated, you know what I mean? But there's still like huge like old stock, and the military has like, especially for like light infantry, has switched over to like the Gustav, like the Carl G, right? And shit like that. And so they've the TOWs, like there used to be in the army, you used to have like a 11 hotel MOS, which would have been like a TOW gunner, like on a Humvee. They used to have like TOWs on a Humvee, and that's kind of the era of the TOW missile. And so there's like tons of like old US stock. So like Hughes aircraft missiles were like showing up in fucking like Al Qaeda and ISIS videos from the Syrian war, where they were like filming themselves like shooting civilian trucks and shit and just blowing them up. And then what happened, like the way that and what's really interesting is that like when these videos came out, they started getting scrubbed off of YouTube, because there was just like people that were I don't know if it was like the actual fighters were posting them on YouTube or if it was their associates, but the way that they would film these was like they would be on the battlefield in engagements, like trying to film their engagements, and then what happened was like they started like, some of them failed, like some of these TOW missiles would actually fail, and then so they would film the fucking like lot number plate and shit in the video, and then like put it out there like look, you guys, like our equipment's bad, like we need more equipment, you know what I mean? Like that's how they were filming the video, and then just like putting it online, like thinking that it was a message in the bottle was going to get to America, and then like Americans were going to be like, oh, we gave them bad stuff, like here's some more stuff. Like they just don't even understand what's going on, right? They think it's like the entire United States like supporting it, at least these guys in this case. That's why they made the video and filmed the serial number on the fucking TOW, but after that came out, like most of that shit got scrubbed. I mean, people got like screen caps of it and shit to trace like the lot numbers and shit. But it's just another like little, I mean, nobody even gives a shit, right? Like everything's so fucked up. Like nobody has time to care about that. But just an interesting point. So anyway, that gets all back around to like once that stuff starts kind of like stabilizing with Syria, like I mean there's still shit going on, but it's not crazy like it was. And so you're getting like the expansion of Chinese into the Middle East, and they are in play with Israel, competing for Israel's affection with the United States, in the United States eyes and in Chinese eyes. But that is an error, because number one, I don't think that it makes any diplomatic sense, like in terms of a diplomatic consideration. Um, for the mere fact that, like, it's basically like going into a deal and, like, you knowing that you don't have any power, like you don't have anything to offer, and then the person that you're trying to, like, set up a deal with also knows that. Like, there's just no way, like, there's no way that you're gonna get a good deal out of that. So why even, the best thing to do would just be like, okay, like, have fun. That's like the best. That's like the most advantageous position that you could take would be to, like, create distance, right? It just makes sense. But of course, they're doing the opposite of that, both sides. And China's might actually be like a water, like China might actually be like, we don't really care, but we're just gonna, for diplomacy's sake, we're gonna pretend like we care. China's pretty smart. Like, culturally, they're pretty intelligent. There's actually, so another thing that's interesting about the current situation in China, in Chinese government in particular, they've had like a foreign diplomacy policy, which is so, like, they have like a no instigation foreign policy. And so, like, I can't remember, I read some term for it that was like a perfect description, but it was something like China's foreign policy is to not exist. You know what I mean? Like their entire purpose of their foreign policy during this build-up phase until now for their industrialization and modernization in China has been to just, like, be gray man. It's just gray man foreign policy. And they've shifted with like all this recent shit after COVID-19. So just in, like, the past couple of weeks, they've done a huge shift, and they switched out a bunch of diplomats, like representatives of China, to foreign nations, and they're all, like, switching to, like, a tough guy stance now. And so they're like on Twitter, you're going to start seeing, like, basically they're modeling Donald Trump's model, because they see that it's effective to like Americans, or that's at least where they're going with it, right? Like, they're doing emulation. And so they're looking at how Donald Trump, like, don't take no shit, and then emulating that into when they run into resistance where they used to be quiet, they're going to start like pushing back, but in a like snarky kind of way, in the attempt to like have favorable view by anybody that be watching it, like to not appear like a sterile, heartless government entity, and appear like more like humanistic, which is what Donald Trump's strategy in terms of, like, his tweets, like the first 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency has been, it was like just nothing but every single tweet would be like a groundbreaker in terms of like stepping over the barrier of political correctness. It'd be like one inch at a time with every tweet, and they saw the effectiveness of that, and then they're modeling that now. So you're gonna see, you should start to see, like currently, and in the weeks ahead, you should start to see the news, like the MSM in the United States, begin to cite Chinese diplomats' brazen tweets as an example of Chinese unruliness, and unreasonableness. And it's probably, there is a good possibility that on the Chinese end, this strategy has been planted like a seed in order to support the animosity as we build up towards the war opening with China, right? Like, it all kind of goes together and works together, right? So we talked about Belt and Road. I don't want to get too deep into Belt and Road, but that stuff about, I guess it's their academy now, Blackwater Academy, providing the service for it, right? We talked a little bit about the Pompeo visit. I guess we should talk about the Dershowitz, right? Because that's been everywhere. So Dershowitz, what was that Dershowitz interview? Yeah, Abdullah says the Iraq discussion holds a special place in my heart. Yeah, me too, Abdullah. Hey, Abdullah, where are you from in Iraq? Baghdad. Yeah. Yep. Yep. It's a bad situation. That whole deal. Very bad. The There's a now I do have a video. I'm gonna cut it up when like after I do this. I'm gonna work on some music and then I'll cut up and put it up here. But I have a video of Dick Cheney from like post Gulf War, like the original Gulf War, in like discussing at two different. So it's like he does one that's like an interview, and then he does one that's these are like speeches that he gives, or like official interview. One's an official interview with I think it's like CBS or maybe it's C-SPAN interview, and the other one is a like a speech that he's giving at some kind of yuppie convention, and it's fantastic because both of them are filmed in the 90s, so like we haven't had 9/11 yet. Iraq's not invaded, and then the C-SPAN interview, the interviewer asked him, like, why didn't you go into Iraq? And they're referencing like the Gulf War, right? Like the first Gulf War, and then he goes into an explanation that's about 3 minutes long, describing exactly what has occurred since 9/11, like all the way into a Syrian civil war. Describes it like eerily exact, and then he does it twice. So like the second time is like obviously later, and he's like at a some kind of convention at a podium, and then he's giving a speech, and then he kind of like ties in what he said in the interview and just starts like recalling it, and then is like, yeah, that's good to say, and then he puts it in there. And so I made this video where it's fucking beautiful because it's just like two different places, two different like tempos of speech and shit, and then it's like the same thing with minor modifications, according to Dick Cheney's like brain, but it's just like it really pushes home like how much the wargaming was exact, like how exactly they knew exactly what the fuck was happening and how good they are at destroying the planet, right? Like it's fucking, they're experts. And I'll work on that and release that. I've already got it cut up, but it's in a bigger project that I probably won't do. So I'll pull the video out and put it as a standalone video and throw it up on this channel. Yeah. So what we should talk about before Dershowitz? We should talk about the EO, right? So I mentioned this in a video. There's the EO is about the activation of the reserve components and National Guard components for COVID vaccine. That's been a huge deal, but that's really overshadowed the other EO, which would be EO 13920, EO 13920, and that was like May 1st, right? So it's pretty recent, and that one's called Securing Bulk Power Systems. So what the narrative is in the EO is that bulk power systems are vulnerable to foreign like remote attack, right? And so obviously this is like the narrative is aimed at China, right? So but what's really interesting about it is that when you read into it, it very much appears like there is a huge effort through the DNI, like the Director of National Intelligence, under the Department of Energy, to switch out components in the nationalized power systems, like the power systems that are spread out through the United States, in order to put in components that will become vulnerable, because this limits like you have to imagine. So there's the public narrative, right, of man, we just didn't even know that there were like these Chinese components may have vulnerabilities. Like we got to switch them out. We got to, care. We care about the United States and people's safety, and we just need to switch these out just to be safe. This is just a national security issue, right? That's the public narrative. But we don't play that, right? So we're looking at, we already know that nobody, like we wouldn't even have any fucking trade if these people wouldn't have set it up in the first place with China. Like we wouldn't even have motherfucking electronics being manufactured in China if it wasn't for these motherfuckers. So you automatically know that the narrative is false, right? Because they purposely put all that shit there in the first place. And so you have to look at it and go like, okay, well, if they set up this entire situation with China where we're now like gonna go to war with China, then, and if they want to switch out bulk power components, then obviously the reason why would be to put in something that's specifically designed to have a known vulnerability. And the reason that they would want to do that is to attribute a power grid failure to China, right? Because now they can put in, because the provisions of this EO, the EO 13920, the provisions include two things. So it's a regulatory control on and cessation of previous held orders, right? Like bulk power system component orders that are like in progress, like contracts that are set over like a span of years, right? Like for replacement and shit. So all those are canceled. That's the first part, right? That's like cessation. And then you have the regulatory control where it's like you have to resubmit orders through different manufacturers, and you have to use an approved component list. And this is all done through let's see. This is all going to be done through the Task Force on Federal Energy Infrastructure Procurement Policies, which is it's basically like your executive independent agencies are taking their secretaries and they put them on a board. And so the ominous thing is like that you have like Director of National Intelligence is on this, obviously, and then you have like less ominous things like the Director of O&B. You got the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the Secretary of Commerce, that would be Wilbur Ross, that's Rothschild. You've got Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of Defense, which is interesting. And you've got the Secretary of Energy as the chair of that board. And they're like doing the paperwork side. And then that whole thing is like under it's all going to be under DOE funding, right? It's under the DOE Department of Energy's budget, and they have to. They're consolidating all of the components that they're going to be ordering. They're replacing the old ones with government protected vendors. So it's like you can't just go out. They can't go out and just like order on Amazon the shit they want. We're also talking about like huge power systems, right? Like these are like killable systems and shit. And they have to go through. It's just like everything else. It's just like how in a municipality they become grant compliant to compete for grants like a lottery, and then they lose autonomy for the municipalities. So like the for anything like a municipal project, like say like waste management or something, they lose the ability to free contract. In this example, they would have to go through like pre-approved, everything pre-approved, right? And those companies are, they're going through like a reciprocal regulatory squeeze, just like the purchaser, right? The customer, the municipality. And that's the exact same thing that's going on here, but it's for power standards. So this is being done with like the NEA, that regulates, that gives guidance on, electrical standards and shit like that. And this is rolling out like no later than a year. They have like 1 year timeline. And it all has to do with interconnected, energy transmission. All of your interconnected grid. Okay, So that's something that like people need to be aware of, like especially if people need to remember this when motherfucking cities like start getting their power popped off and you got like riots or people die or whatever, and then they blame China, right? Because that's most assuredly the only thing that fucking makes sense about this EO, right? Like it doesn't really make it doesn't hold water in terms of the public narrative that's written into the EO. Okay, so that's something to look out for. And then Dershowitz, right? So Abdullah's asking me about an earlier message. Let's see. Are you talking about in this chat, Abdullah? I remember in Iraq, the U.S. put up these strange boxes near electrical and power that would get shut down for a district. Now I know that like okay, so Abdul was asking me if I knew something about a box that was placed near power and that would apparently like get shut down. So I know that like so what was happening in my AO is that you were having a lot of like if there's something critical, if there's like a what was considered a critical infrastructure service or something like that, and it would have to be guarded, right? Like so it'd have to have like Iraqi army there to even put any resources into it, like if it was a school or something like that. And they would bring out like generators and set up generators, and then there would be shit like there's like they had like the shot spotter and shit like that. Most of that was like vehicle mounted, but they would put them on permanent installations, or you would have basically like these ultra fucking, they were like bandwidth limited spark gap generators that would be like $1 million, and they would put them on like every Humvee, like the My system or the Chameleon, like I'm sure you guys remember the Chameleon system where it's like a dome on the back of your Humvee, and or like the My system where it'd be like a big fucking box with an antenna. Well, all of those are like, so the contractors that made those were basically like overcharging the government, just like everybody else, just like the entire Iraq war was like let's rob the U.S. government. And they were basically making like a plexiglass shell, or a fiberglass shell over a like a bandwidth pass spark gap generator, and they were just setting it to a frequency that would be low enough to stop like infrared and like lower frequency or higher. I'm sorry, like VHF, and it would stop like VHF and UHF bandwidths, and it wouldn't stop like the lower like air band and shit like that. It would just have like a bell on it, and on the frequencies. But the so in stateside, no. So like they don't want in stateside, they want all the monitoring. So like they want all systems go. So you're not going to see like frequency jamming and shit from the government side. Now, if a conflict breaks out in the United States, if people are smart, like if there's guerrilla warfare going on in the United States, like you would do well to learn electronics engineering and understand frequencies and like jamming, because you can really fucking turn somebody's op into a bowl of spaghetti if you're like good at that, and it's not that hard. Yeah, we're not talking about 5G on this episode. Okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. We will talk about 5G. Fuck it. Okay. So 5G, the 5G. Nope, you're good. We're fucking good. We're talking about 5G. You got a couple guys talking about it. We're gonna talk about it. So 5G is obviously that's a higher frequency, like high amplitude transmission. So they're just shifting the band to be able to send a higher bit rate. Like they're doing a greater transfer of data in a more powerful transmission. Now, it is true. Like it's the setup to prepare for IoT, which is the greater threat, because IoT is IoT is Internet of Things, It's been IoT started as like I don't even think that IoT as a concept began as a uh, I know that you have like technocrat movement and shit, and like the like all the way back to the 30s. But I don't think that I think most of the IoT shit is from like hams and shit, like mostly specifically like European hams, and that's where you get like most of your uh, like your split spectrum transceivers and shit, like micro transceivers that are split spectrum that are ultra long range and super low power draw, like getting experimented with and developed in the like private sector as like a hobby in Europe, right? So like the development of LoRa and its competitors, the I can't remember what it's called, like Fox something rather, and these are all like they're like, and it coincided with the development of like UAV technology. So like as you have like the military making and contractors making like ultra fucking expensive UAVs, and then you had like the technology breakout of like components like SMD components and shit into the civilian market through China and the United States, that fueled the development of like if you fly like FPV drones and shit like that would be like the civilian side. And then the same thing happened with like radios, right? So you had like all of your ham radios went through like a very high velocity evolutionary period where they were like getting really cheap. Like you started to have digitally encrypted radios on the cheap, like Baofeng has some digital encryption, like standards that are being released in digital radios, and we're talking like radios that are like $40, with like legit like split channel dual band, like live dual band digital transmission and shit, encrypted transmission. And you start to see like SDR is the other thing, right? Like all of your both SDR receivers and SDR transceivers. So like Hack 1 RF and the dongles, like the little dongles, the SDR receivers. Which, by the way, if you don't have a SDR dongle, you need to be buying them, because they are like fucking super cheap right now. You can get a dongle off of eBay, like a Chinese import, for like $20. And if you're not aware of this, so this is digital radio, and it's where you use your computer CPU power to and software, like free software, like I recommend SDR Sharp, SDR like Sharp, like pound sign, like SDR pound sign. You use your computer processing power to act and software to act as a digital radio, and then you use a dongle as like the hardware side, and it just plugs into your USB, and then you can now you can't transmit, right? So we're talking like a receiver here, but that's still really powerful. If you want to do a transceiver, it's even better. You just probably don't want to. I mean, you do whatever the fuck you want, but there are FCC regulations on radio transmissions in the United States, and everything's recorded. So like if you're fucking around and fucking something up, and like if you're causing problems that cost people money, like they're gonna, if the problem costs enough, they're gonna spend an equal amount to come find you and stop you. You know what I mean? So if the transceiver version of SDR would be like either like a desk unit, where those are pretty expensive, or like a Hack 1 RF, which is basically like a dongle. It's like a larger version of a dongle that will also transmit. So you can put in, you can actually output signal. And so this stuff is like ranging from like gigahertz spectrum all the way down to like fucking low megahertz, like huge range, using the CPU power, which is like way greater than an analog radio. And it gives you real-time analysis too, so you can get like and you can pick up everything. So you're just basically like listening to the air, and then you can type in a frequency and go to that. You can make, because it's a computer, you can do like huge data sets of channels, and have like every fucking, I mean, you can have like you can have like the fire department, police department, sheriff's department, ambulance services, like Parks and Rec, everything in like a file, and then just like click on it, and it's like you're listening to it in real time. And you can, the other thing that you can do is what is it, ASVAB, like ASVAB. I can't remember. So there's another freeware program that you can use in conjunction with it to monitor aircraft, and then you get like in real time, you get the aircraft transmissions. Like I'm talking about like position, altitude, speed, shit like that, and then tail number. Like you get all that shit, right? And you can, like, you open up on your computer screen, and it's like a radar, and you can see like the fucking aircraft moving, and it'll get matched off of like, you know, Open Maps or Google Maps or whatever. So this is like, if like everybody should have this, because it's available now, and it's useful for, I mean, you can use it for like emergency situations, where if you're having like a hurricane, if you're on the coast, or if you're like having a tornado or a flood or a fucking civil war, you know, like any of them, it's pretty useful. Like you should have one for sure. At least the receiver. I probably wouldn't recommend the transceiver. So anyway, that was like a little tangent, talking about the escape of like super cheap proliferated electronics, and that went along with like things like LoRa, which is like a split spectrum that a split spectrum transmission protocol that kind of like rose to the top and kind of worked out most of its competitors. And you know what like LoRa, to describe it, it's like a little teeny chip that can send out a signal. Now you have to have other, it doesn't work by itself, it's not standalone, like you have to build devices to use it. But basically it was designed to be used with a gateway, meaning that it connects to the internet, but not through the chip, right? Like the chip transmits to a LoRa receiver, and the receiver is like hooked up to a gateway. Now you get into the internet. And so now the idea here is that, you know, in terms of like the government getting a hold of it, the government started to look at it as like, you know, once they realized the sheer insanity of the whole thing, like how powerful it is, they started to, you know, pull it out of, now it's certainly like that technology is strongest in like the ham community. It's way stronger than government. It has way more support and background and shit. And hopefully the ham community is somewhat guarded about like helping the state set up like a totalitarian government with it. But if they're not, or if they're not aware of the threat, then like that is what's going to happen. So this shit, like the LoRa transceivers can send signals like hundreds of kilometers, and their power consumption is ultra low. They can run off of you know, like a 2032, like the battery that you put in your aim point. You can run like a sensor, any kind of sensor. I won't say any, but like all of your, like all the shit that you think of when you think of sensors, like infrared sensors, microwave sensors, acoustic sensors, humidity sensors, you know, whatever. You could put like magnetometers in there and shit, like whatever you want, and then it just transmits the signal to wherever you want. And you can set up LoRa to work in node, where it's like node to node, like one transceiver to another transceiver set up as a transmitter and receiver, and then you cannot have it connected to the internet, like through a gateway, or you can set it up to where it transmits through a gateway. You know, either way. So it's extremely flexible and extremely powerful and extremely cheap. We're talking like $10, $15 units here of like the whole thing all combined, like all the expense of the components that you would just design a little doodad to sense something. So like, you know, theoretically, it's definitely something that people need to look at for like security and for defense, because you can basically like, you can set it up as like a sensor to sense people approaching, like you can set it up to sense like vehicles like passing by a road, or what, you know, whatever. It's, your imagination is the limit, but it's significant, right? And when the government gets a hold of IoT and rolls that out as a like international program, this is what like 5G is for, to handle the bandwidth of like billions of fucking little teeny sensors going off all the time, like, you know, every time that you fucking like open your door, right? And you also see this, creeping with like companies like Siemens and Honeywell and shit, and all of the Bluetooth and like Wi-Fi connected devices that they've been releasing. They're like, it's almost like they're setting up for a transition into having, gateway connectivity of like everything. So like all of you now, you view it as a consumer, you view it like, wow, this is great, I do everything from my phone. But the significant danger here is that you may wake up to a future sometime where like every fucking thing, like now it's not just your phone when you use it, when you're typing a message and your message is like, recorded and somebody can look at it so you don't have any privacy. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about like you're just walking around your house without your phone, and now like everything that you're doing is sending off like a signal that's being collected. So somebody can watch. If this rolls out and goes the direction that it looks like, we're talking like a future where basically a map gets painted of like activity throughout your day without the use of your phone. Most people walk around with their phone all the time these days, like in the city. Like people that have no idea what's going on, they're gonna be like carrying their phone everywhere. So that just reinforces the whole thing, right? So you have like redundant fucking surveillance through the shit that people are doing every day. And that's what 5G is all about, is to increase the data transfer rates everywhere and make the system like the communication system infrastructure in the United States be able to handle the load of like, it would certainly be like billions of transmitters going off all the time. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with this, like, so just to I've talked about this a little bit before, but like I'll just mention it just for anybody that's like stumbled in here and hasn't, isn't following the stream. This is not like a regular viewer. So, like your cell phone basically has, it's got packets that send out, and it's got like backdoors written into it. So like the packets send abbreviated data, and you can actually capture the packets with software. Like if you want to look at what is actually being sent out by your phone when you're not doing anything, you can actually download like apps, that people make to be able to view the packets that are going out. So you can, and it's different depending on the phone manufacturer, but most certainly, it typically contains like location and your IMEI and shit like that. And if it doesn't, then your location can be determined by the tower receivers, like where they are, because they're going to, each tower receiver is unidirectional, almost like a microphone or something, or like an antenna, because that's what it is, right? So if it's the tower, like a single tower can't tell where you're at, it can just tell the intensity of the packet, right? And then you can gauge like approximate distance on that, but it's unidirectional. Once you get two towers, now it's, if you're here sending off a signal and you got two towers and your IMEI is going out, well, your IMEI is related to your identity through your payment accounts. So like when you set up, this is the reason that the government has done away with like prepaid. Fuck. I just got assassinated. So this is the reason that the government has worked really hard all over the world to eliminate like anonymous phone usage. So like if you're young, if you're an older guy like me, if you're an old dirty bastard like me, then you're gonna remember like payphones. So in the United States, there used to be fucking payphones everywhere, like anywhere that you go. If you went somewhere, so like this would be like when businesses, before the internet, there were like shopping malls and every town, and there would be like little compressed areas where you'd have a bunch of businesses, and they would always have, there'd be payphones by the sidewalk and shit, and you could just go up to them and like pop in a quarter and then just like make a phone call. And then there wasn't a whole lot of like tracing or anything. So like prank calls were huge back then. Like people would do prank calls all the time, and like nobody would get caught. You know what I mean? Like nobody, like they didn't have, the government didn't even really have the, like they could know that the call came from a payphone, but that was it. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have like voice analysis. They didn't have like any of the shit that they have now. And so like that all has changed, obviously, and they've eliminated all the payphones, you know, and then they're slowly eliminating the ability to you know, have anonymized communication, you know. And this is like, there's two factors to this. One of them is like, you know, how you have to have an account to, you know, use a phone, right? But or to buy a phone and pay for like recurring service. But also on where was I gonna go with that? You got the bill. Well, it doesn't matter. So anyway, the phone is not secure now. There is a good you can like remove some shit from your phone. Like if you wanted absolutely no ability of like being listened to, then you can remove microphones. Most of the modern phones have multiple microphones, and they typically install like one, sometimes two, that are not intuitively placed, so that they're installed under the idea of like being like picking up you know, like acoustic like reverb and shit, like through chips and shit. So they're not like positioned like right where your mouth is. They're like kind of like hidden. But it's more likely that these are just like extra fucking mics to just make sure that there's not, you know, like you don't. It's just like redundant, so that if your mic your mic chip fails or something, then you can have another one, so that they're like always listening, you know, if they want to. You can't remove that shit. You'd have to look into it. You look up like SMD components, SMD chips and shit to, you know, soldering, and look up like a video of how to take apart your phone. So anyway, that was a really deep segue, relating back to the vulnerability of the Power Pack executive order that got put out. Again, the Power Pack EO was 13920. That came out on May 1st, and certainly looks to be. It would be really interesting if we could get somebody that is in the like familiar with this to look up, like somebody that's in the NEA, or you know, I mean, obviously not like in a public way. Like don't expose yourself. But if you're familiar with this shit, like if you know about this EO and have heard about it, like coming through your company and shit, it would be fucking awesome if you could at least like let me know who the vendors are or what the particular products are. Or if you listen to the stream and you're like, oh fuck, I didn't even think about that, but that's like, you know, that's probably, you know, maybe I should look at that. If you could check out and see like see if maybe like, because you'll probably be able to identify like bulk power components better than I would. So if you can, like if you see something that looks like it could be a vulnerability or something that they're really pressing on, like you have to get this component, you know, then if you could send me an email and then I could share it with people. Of course I won't, you know, I'll be sensitive to your identity and shit, you know, like we won't talk about any of that shit. But you know, if you could send me an email, my email is duger@tudanota.com. And that's pretty. Did anybody want to talk anything else about China, like related to China and Israel or anything like that? Something that's significant? Okay. No, Abdullah is bored as fuck by that. Yep. Okay, Dershowitz. Everybody saw fucking Dershowitz, right? So Dershowitz is talking about fucking sticking. So it's the title of this video, right? Like I modeled the little fake like internet video. It's like fuck her right in the pussy, like FHRITP, right? That's like Dershowitz with like just stick him right in the arm. You know what I mean? And that's the title of this video, right? And because Dershowitz, if you didn't know this, he had an interview. You guys can put the put the link in the comments right here for people that don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so they can go see the video. But who's the guy that he's interviewing? Dershowitz had an interview with this cat who's like Jason Goodman. Okay, and I got the impression I don't watch Jason Goodman, and I'm not like familiar with him, and I didn't really, I just went to the part where the juicy stuff. I got the impression that Jason Goodman was like totally faking his aversion to this. Like when Dershowitz says, like, you will be taken by the police and they will stick you in the arm and you don't have a constitutional right to refuse vaccine. Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so JP says he's completely funny. Like, I could see that. I watched like 1 minute of the video and I was like, obviously this is just like a performance, right? Like he's faking the like aversion to it. And which is interesting, right? Like, that's pretty interesting. Like, what could that mean, right? Like, you gotta think about that, because you wouldn't, if it was fake, which it is obviously, then you like, if you wanted people to go along with it and do the stick, then you wouldn't want to act averse to the idea. Like, you wouldn't want to look like he looked like he was like non-accepting of it, but it looked fake. You know what I mean? Like it was a performance. Like, he didn't seem like he came around. Did he end up coming around at the end of the video and be like, "Oh, I guess vaccines are pretty good after all"? Turns out having some random shit injecting me is a good thing after all. Oh, is in your recommended feed? J-Jaw says that video was in his recommended feed. Was that, do you have, J-Jaw, do you have personalized ads on or not through YouTube? That's important, right? If you guys don't have it, you should turn off your personalized ads for YouTube, because that way, when you see a recommended video or an ad, yeah, in your Google settings, right? Because that way you're going to see what the default is, like what they're pushing, right? Because all that shit's coordinated, so you'll have an understanding of what is supposed to be pushed to people that, if you were just like a brand new born baby and got an iPhone, which is pretty much how everybody like raises a family these days, you'll be able to see what the baby sees and know what they're really trying to push, right? But if you have it on, if you have personalized ads on through Google, then you're gonna get shit like, you're just gonna get a bunch of fucking like, what is that guy with the Viper logo? The fucking the dude with the CCTV shootings, like police shootings and stuff, whatever it is, defense something or other. You're gonna get a bunch of his videos. Hey, have a good night, user. Okay. So Dershowitz. So, I know that it's not going to go well, right? Like, obviously, people are not going to get vaxxed, right? Like, that's the only thing that's weird about this whole thing, is that it certainly looks like it's designed to cause conflict, because there is no, I mean, people in the city are going to do it, but maybe, I guess the conflict could be geared towards getting people in the city to go and attack people that aren't in the city. Like, I could see that, right? I could see that. That would make sense. But outside of that, if you don't consider that, it doesn't really make sense to, like, if the goal was everybody get on the same page and on board and toe in the line and follow orders, then it's like you want total compliance. Well, if you're pushing it hard and like freaking people out, then it's like, obviously you're not going to get compliance. You know what I mean? Especially with fucking vaccines. Like, if they wanted vaccines, then it would have had to have been like the Black Death. Like, we would have had to kill like, fucking 2/3 of the population with Black Death, and then release something that, and fake documents of like, this is the efficacy on this vaccine is great. Like, it's got, look at how high the efficacy rate is. That's what That's what they should have done if they wanted that. So it looks like this is more of like we're gonna get all the people that are on board with the vaccine to like attack. You know, we're gonna start refocusing the mind, the public mind, like the sociosphere to like aim and direct inwards in the United States to the people that are resisting the government. That's what I perceive from the Dershowitz thing, and I perceive the Jason Goodman as you know, putting on a performance along with Allen to create this conflict in you know, a picturesque demonstration in a video that looks to be organic. The other thing that's super weird is I haven't looked at Agenda 21 in a while. Could you Gerald, could you put your source link for Agenda 21 consolidated in like the video actual comments, not in the live chat, but in the like the actual fucking video comments, please? Okay, thank you. Where were we going with that? It certainly seems like it's gearing the United States up to like the entire GWAT, and like during that period of where everybody was only focused on the threat of Islamic terrorism. The entire that entire narrative was used to fuel and unleash the gates of like setting up the surveillance state. And it was all turned, like it wasn't even turned. I don't even want to use the word turned inward. It was like when they set the motherfuckers up, when they set up the fucking cameras, they were already inward. You know what I mean? Like no change was taking place. They just said like this is for terrorism, this is for national security, and then it was just aimed at us the entire time. And now we're like getting that was like the hardware side of it, of that equation, and now you're getting the psychological, you know, like group thought side of that, where you have social engineering pushing the public psyche to shift its fear and distrust of like immigrants and you know, for, you know, hostile nations and foreign terrorists, shifting that to the domestic population. And that's what, you know, and there's a lot of shit that's gone with that. I was surprised that they haven't pushed PTSD harder, because it really looked for a while they were really like, you know, with the whole like 22 vets a day suicide thing. It really looked like that there was a possibility that the state was going to start demonizing vets like hardcore as a like national security threat, like terrorist threat, like their own vets. It really looked like that, and I don't know if they abandoned it because they thought that it was like a bridge too far. Like they're like, well, we're not going to actually be able to get them to kill their own vets, so let's, like, you know, start over on that one, right? What do we have here? Yeah, so Mr. Derps claims that Dershowitz is an Israeli agent. I mean, you know, like, I don't doubt you, right? But what's your source material on that? Do you have anything that you can post that's like obvious for that? Dershowitz is Spanish. I mean, what does that mean? Obviously, Dershowitz is not, like, if you hold Dershowitz up to like somebody from Spain, he's going to be more associated with a different place than that. Dershowitz is associated with Fast and Furious. Abbott Fisher says he's a Fed USDA, and everybody in this chat needs to put you guys better do what he says. He'll fucking pull your fucking, you know, your fucking gluten-free certification. Okay. We're not gonna go in this because you guys don't have very good like control of your fucking source material here. Okay, So now this is what I'm gonna say. This is what I will say. We're gonna go a little bit more. We're gonna go a little bit more broad, right? So it is like there's a lot of, you know, there's a, now I'll get to that after. There's a lot of Jews in the U.S. government that are like, you know, promoting things that are anti-American, you know, and having, you know, the relationship between Israel, the nation state, and the United States in terms of you know, the crossover since Israel's founding, which is you know, like Truman recognized Israel, if you didn't know that, and the way that Truman, so there's a really good, I think it's in the I don't think it's on ADL YouTube. It's on maybe like the Holocaust Memorial YouTube or something like that. There's an interview with Harry Truman was a businessman in Missouri, out of Kansas City, prior to going into the presidency, and he had a business partner that was named Jacobson, and Jacobs, the last name we're talking, and Jacobson like got approached by, I think it was like Chaim Weiss and Weissman and some other Zionists during the founding of Israel to pressure him into agreeing to recognize Israel on behalf of the United States through through his executive office. And Truman was like super like not on board with doing that. Like he didn't want to fuck with it. He was just like, nope, get the next president. And they tried multiple times, and the only way that they got it was by contacting Jacobson, who was Jewish, and like asking him to convince Truman. And then Truman actually tells a story on video about this where he discusses how like his business partner, he had a ton of respect for him because they both like built their lives and careers together, and he said that his business partner never asked him for anything outside of the like their point of mutual respect was like centered on their mutual you know, endeavor in a business, and then they personally respected each other, like, you know, aside from that, but their main focus was like, you know, everything that they talked about all the time was like, you know, they're very straight and down to business, right? Like do or die. And Truman basically said that he never was asked anything by Jacobson ever. And then like after he turned down Haim, he got approached by Jacobson. Jacobson came to the White House, and he said that like Jacobson never came to the White House, right? So he knew that it was a big deal. And then he let Jacobson in, and he's just like, you know, in this interview, he says, so, you know, I look at Jacobson and I'm basically like, what is it? You know, Jacobson, like, I know that you got some fucking shit here. Going like, what do you want? And Jacobson is like, we need you to recognize Israel. And that's how Israel got recognized. Hello. Patton, are you the Patton that I know? Or what? So anyway, that's the story of Israel, like how the United States. Nice, welcome, bro. So so fucking, you know, I mean, since then, since like 48, you get, I mean, it's you know, there's an obvious, you know, you get like and then before that you have like Bernard Baruch and you know, like Justice Brandeis, who's the first Supreme Court justice to be a Jew. Like prior to Brandeis, you really don't have any Jews in the United States government. Like they're huge in media, right? Like film and news is like, you know, that's like all Jews. Like pretty much since like since the invention of film, you know, or picture, or imagery. And so Patton, what do you think about this channel? Have you been watching these? I'm curious what Patton thinks. Do you like them, or are you like you getting what's going on, or are you like watching them and like not understanding and all pissed off at me or something? Where's my bro? How are you doing anyway? I haven't talked to you in a couple of years. What do you think about it? You like it or not? You guys are basically like watching a conversation. Like I've just like pushed you guys over to the side and just like started having a personal conversation. Sorry about that. We're not going to talk about Upanas. It's interesting. It's interesting. But I'm curious. I'm curious what your like if you see it as like, do you see it as a respectful thing or as a disrespectful thing? I guess is what I'm really asking. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm interested to know your thought. Okay, yeah, for sure. You give me a call whenever. Okay. So where are we going with this? All right, so we were talking about Dershowitz and the accusation of him being like Mossad, right? And now this is what I guess what I was trying to get at was I was trying to say that, like, you know, when you guys are accusing people of being Mossad and shit, like, I don't think that you understand how integrated the Israeli government is into the United States. Like, it's like I'll tell you this. This is what I'll tell you, right? Okay. So like my experience, so we talked about yesterday, and this is good because this is a segue into the next topic, which is follow up on yesterday's video. So yesterday was a like we went over we got into Noahide and we got into like LGBT inoculation of universalism into like using LGBT as the inoculation route to introduce Noahidism into the world population, right? And we're gonna round back out to that. So like part of when we were discussing Noahide, we were talking about Chabad. Like, you remember that when we were talking about Chabad Lubavitchers? And are you guys familiar with that or what? Well, I'm not gonna go into Discord. Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to you just send me an email or something, because I'm still Abdullah. I'm like one round on Discord, and I'm just not used to it. Like I need to fucking sit down and do some like practice runs to figure out how to navigate it. I need to see like a how-to video and watch it, and then I'll understand. Because when I try to go in there, it just ends up being it's just a shit sandwich, right? Okay. Okay. So we were talking about Chabad, right? And so like Chabad, there's basically like I don't 100% know what Chabad's mission is, but I can bracket it. So Chabad's mission is either to initiate and introduce Noahide law into the nation states, like slowly transition it, or they're out there looking for Mashiach ben Yosef. I don't know which one. It's one of the two, okay, or both, right? And so like my first experience with Chabad was really interesting. So like, and we're gonna get into some like stuff here. So you guys gotta understand, for both the Jews that are watching this and for the goys that are watching this, like, you gotta understand something. So when I'm saying all this shit, like, especially if you're not like if you don't critically watch this, then you're going to hear exactly what you want to hear out of my words, right? So like, if you're a Jew and you are like neurotically paranoid that people are anti-Jewish, then that's what you're going to hear out of what I say. If you are an anti-Jewish person and you don't like Jews, then that's what you're going to hear, that reinforced out of what I say. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not like that, then you're going to hear something else. And this is like this is a quality of like creation, and the way that each person has their own site, and that their site is an exclusive world that is completely legitimate. Okay, SDG wants me to stop. Do you guys want to stop, or you want to keep on going, or should we roll into a new stream? Let's do that. So I'm gonna kill this one. We're gonna roll into a new stream, and I'm gonna throw up a different title. Okay, that way we can divide them out. Yeah, we're gonna go into a follow-up stream from yesterday. This is a good place to stop. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good night. I love you.